What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back. Alright, I'm going to do a book review in this video. And I know some people are like, what? Who reads books, right? But yeah, I read this book very recently, and I found it really entertaining, and I wanted to share it with you guys. It's not kind of like the usual, it doesn't necessarily have to do with the usual stuff that I've been talking about lately, but I did find this story, the book, to be very entertaining, very interesting, and even. you know. So I wanted to share it with you guys. All right. So the title of this book is How to Be a Chicana Role Model by Michele Serros. No, she's a Chicana. She's a Latina. For those of you who don't know, Chicana is like kind of like a Mexican American woman. And Chicano would be kind of like a Mexican American man, or just like Mexican American, right? So I read this book and I found it very entertaining. The title of the book, How to Be a Chicana Role Model, like that title came from Michelle being invited to speak at an event, and the people who were in charge of the event dubbed her as a Chicana role model. But she noticed that, her peers who also were speaking at the event, particularly her white peers, they were not dubbed role model. They were not given the title of role model. And this book sort of kind of like makes fun of that to an extent, but also kind of like gives you some serious insight here and there. It's kind of like funny at times, and then it's a little serious at little points here and there, right? I'll just go through right quick and sort of tell you like my favorite stories. I liked a lot of them, but I'll tell you like some of my favorite stories. Favorite story. One of my favorite stories is Seek Support from Sisters, and that's with an A. And that's when Michelle was like a page, a production assistant on In Living Color. And it also talks about her interacting with Jennifer Lopez, or kind of like, yeah, that story is really hilarious, by the way. And this book is dubbed fiction, but I'm not sure if it's completely fictional, but I can understand why she would say it's fiction because of what, details that she put in the book. I can understand why she would say fiction so that she could avoid being sued, Let's see, another story that I enjoyed, because this book is sort of like a collection of short stories, that sort of relate to the theme of to the title. Role model rule number 5, or the story that follows that, is respect the 1%. This story I do kind of like too. It's a bit more serious, but basically it's about Michelle's uncle or great uncle. I think it was her uncle. He telling the family to basically don't support movies about Latinos that don't have Latinos in them. And I'm like, I can definitely understand where they're coming from with that. And this story kind of revolves around the family wanting to see this the movie Evita that stars Madonna. And they wanted to see it on Christmas Day, and Michelle was like, no, basically because this story should have a Latina playing Evita, not Madonna, right? And she ultimately, well, I won't give away, but yeah, that was a story that was really interesting to me too. Another story that was really interesting was Let's Go Mexico. This is when Michelle studies abroad in Mexico in order to, improve her Spanish, because, she's a Latina, she's a Chicana, but she doesn't speak Spanish fluently. She speaks it as a foreign language. And I can definitely relate to that. And I'm sure she probably had people which she speaks about in the book, by the way, had people sort of criticize her Spanish, right? And they probably feeling like, oh, you should speak Spanish better. You should speak it like a native speaker. But Michele, she's like fourth generation though, so it's a little difficult to maintain the Spanish language in the United States, being a fourth generational Chicana, right? But I can relate in some aspects to that. But I feel like with me, in my situation, I feel like I would probably get like a pass because I'm not a Latino. But I have personally have been in situations where, I would say at least two, where my Spanish has been criticized. You know, one by a coworker who criticized my Spanish, and he found it to be a very gringo. And I explained to he thought that I was a Latino, so he kind of was judging my Spanish based on that. But I had like a conversation, long conversation with him, explaining that I'm not a Latino. I do speak Spanish as like a foreign language. I wasn't exposed to it in my house. Like he was exposed to it in his household, like, right. But yeah. The next story that I really liked was Reclaim Your Right as a Citizen of Here. And that story is really, I can really relate to this story as well, because, Michele in this story, she talks about how some people, especially some white people, ask her like where she's from. And she's like, oh, I'm from California. And they're like, no, where are you really from? Right. And she's like, I'm from here, Thus, in this story, she's telling folks, her people, to like reclaim your citizenship of here, like this is your land, thus you can be from here. You know what I mean? It's a little, I could have phrased that better, but basically, if you're from the United States and you don't look like you're quote unquote from the United States, it's okay. And to reclaim your spot in the United States, like you don't have to look a certain way to be from the United States, So yeah, I really enjoyed that story. And also in this story, she asked this guy that she was on the plane with, she was sitting next to him, and she asked him, oh, where are you from? And then it was a white guy, by the way, and she asked him, where is he from? And he's like, no, I'm from here. And then she's like, oh, I mean, where are you really from? And he's like, I'm from here. And then it kind of like snowball into a whole conversation that becomes, ends with the guy being kind of mad. I guess because he's white. This is probably the first time that he's ever probably felt othered by somebody, especially because white people are kind of used to doing the othering when it comes to this type of stuff. But it probably was a bit weird for him because he probably never experienced that, feeling othered in a place that you call your home, a place that you were born and raised in, right? And another good story is honor thy late night phone calls from abuelita, from her grandmother, her granny. And this is like a groupie story of like Michele having like a groupie, and this dude being like so into her and her poetry and stuff. And it's a really funny story that involves like Michele like kind of like this dude. He's like about 10 years younger than her, and he's really into her stories. And like she wants him to have sex with her, but she doesn't want to come out and say it, so she kind of hints at it, and he kind of doesn't receive the hints. He can't take the hint. And then what led to them finally getting it on was Michele had lied and said that she was writing a poem about him, and I guess that kind of got him turned on. So It's a really funny story. Um, but yeah, her grandmother factors into that because her grandmother gave her number to her and her address for some reason to this dude. I think she gave the address to the dude, and then Michelle's like, "Why did you give him my address? It would have been better for you just to give him my number. I mean, either one was still bad, but at least the number it would just be the number. He knows where she lives now." But yeah, she winds up dating the dude for a while. Um, and there's more interesting stories, but I'll just stop it there for the time being. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book. And unfortunately, like this book is out of print, but you can buy it used, like, on eBay or someplace that sells used books. Amazon.com sells used books. And as well, unfortunately, the woman who wrote the book, Michele Serros, unfortunately, she is deceased. She passed away, I believe, in 2015 from complications from cancer. She was undergoing chemotherapy, but one reason or another, unfortunately, she didn't survive her battle with cancer. So, yeah. um, but, I will say it was really, let me think. What I want to say is, like, her writing the books that she has written. She's written a total of 4 books, and this kind of like helps her kind of like live on in a way, you know. And for me, I'm kind of getting to a point now, I've hit like a milestone within my own age, and I'm like, I gotta kind of get the ball rolling on things. I feel like I'm a little behind, and I do kind of like think about my legacy, for a lack of a better word, not to sound like pretentious, but it's sort of things to think about. Like, what is the legacy that you're going to leave? Because we are going to leave, pass on. We just don't know when. So I guess for me, the inspirational part that I took from the book was to sort of like maybe get the ball rolling on what I want to do, and to find and pursue my path in life. But that's all I got to say for the time being. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Well, scratch that. Feel free to comment. Thanks a lot for the support. Adios and goodbye for now.